The sun shone brightly over the quiet suburban neighborhood where Emily lived, its warmth kissing the earth in a comforting embrace. The air buzzed with the familiar hum of cicadas, their steady rhythm weaving into the soundtrack of a lazy summer afternoon. Children's laughter rang out from nearby yards, their voices light and carefree as they played games under the shade of rustling trees. For Emily, it was one of those days that felt untouched by worry or haste, a moment of bliss wrapped in the simplicity of life. At just 14 years old, Emily was the kind of girl who could light up a room simply by entering it. Her contagious laugh often echoed through her home, filling it with a joy that seemed to cling to her every movement. She was curious, always asking questions about the world around her, and she had a knack for finding adventure in the most ordinary places. That day, adventure called to her from the park where her friends were waiting, and she couldn't resist answering. Her bicycle leaned against the porch, its faded blue frame and basket adorned with colorful ribbons, a proud testament to countless rides and memories. Emily grabbed her helmet, its bright pink hue, a cheerful contrast to her wavy brown hair, and stepped out into the golden sunlight. Her parents, seated on the porch swing, exchanged knowing smiles as they watched her prepare for the ride. "Be careful on the road, sweetheart," her mother called, her voice a gentle reminder that spoke of love and concern. "I will, Mom," Emily replied, waving with the easy confidence of someone who had crossed those streets countless times. "See you later." With a final push of her foot, she was off, the bike's wheels crunching softly against the gravel before gliding onto the smooth asphalt of the street. The wind brushed her face, carrying with it the scent of freshly cut grass and blooming flowers. It was one of her favorite feelings, the freedom of movement, the sense of flying as she pedaled faster, the horizon stretching endlessly before her. The world felt wide open, filled with possibility. Emily's route to the park was a familiar one, a path she could have navigated with her eyes closed. It wound through tree-lined streets, past well-kept gardens and white picket fences. As she rode, she hummed softly to herself, a tune she'd heard on the radio that morning, her thoughts floating like dandelion seeds in the wind. The sun climbed higher, casting playful shadows across the pavement. A group of children waved at her from their yard, their hands sticky with melting popsicles. She waved back, her laughter mingling with theirs as she continued on. The world around her seemed alive with light and sound, each moment a snapshot of joy and peace. The intersection came into view just ahead, a crossroad she had crossed countless times before. It wasn't a particularly busy street, but her parents had always reminded her to be cautious. Emily slowed her pace slightly as she approached, out of habit more than necessity. The light was green, and there was no sign of any cars. Everything about the day felt perfect. She pedaled forward, her focus shifting momentarily to the park in the distance. She could almost hear the laughter of her friends, feel the anticipation of the games they would play. The light breeze tugged at the ribbons on her bike, their colors dancing in the sun. Emily smiled to herself, her heart light with the promise of an afternoon spent in joy. If you're enjoying this story, we'd love for you to be part of our growing community. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It's a way to ensure you never miss these heartfelt stories that connect us all. Your support means the world to us, and together we can spread light, love, and inspiration to more hearts. The asphalt shimmered under the summer sun as Emily pedaled through the quiet streets, her thoughts still on the fun waiting for her at the park. Her bike moved smoothly, the hum of the tires blending with the distant chirps of birds and the rhythmic creak of her pedals. She reached the intersection, her confidence unwavering, the green light above signaling that it was safe to cross. As her front wheel touched the crosswalk, time seemed to slow in a way she would later struggle to describe. From the corner of her eye, Emily caught a flash of silver, a car hurtling toward her with a speed that didn't match the calm of the day. It wasn't supposed to be there. The light was red, but the driver, distracted by a fleeting glance at their phone, didn't notice. The warning honks of other cars filled the air, but the vehicle continued, its tires screeching as it raced through the intersection. Emily turned her head, her curious brown eyes widening as realization dawned. There wasn't enough time to react. The world seemed to blur, a cacophony of sounds crashing around her, the sharp gasp of a witness, the deafening squeal of brakes, the metallic crunch as the car collided with her bike. The force lifted her small frame off the seat and into the air like a fragile doll tossed by an unseen hand. She landed hard, the pavement unforgiving as it met her body. Her bike crumpled beneath the weight of the impact, its ribbons tangled in the twisted metal. Silence followed, heavy and suffocating, as if the world itself had taken a breath and forgotten to exhale. A crowd began to gather. Faces blurred by shock and fear leaned over her, their voices frantic and overlapping. A man in a baseball cap crouched by her side, his trembling hands pulling out his phone to call for help. "We need an ambulance," he stammered, his voice breaking. "A girl. She's not moving." Emily's body lay motionless, her limbs splayed in unnatural angles. Her chest barely rose and fell, the rhythm of life slipping further with each passing second. The bystanders' panic was palpable, their helplessness etched into their faces as they waited for the sound of sirens to shatter the stillness. When the paramedics arrived, they moved quickly, their practiced hands assessing the extent of Emily's injuries. The scene was a blur of flashing lights, hurried instructions, and desperate attempts to stabilize her. A faint pulse flickered beneath their touch, but it was weakening, the fragile thread of life threatening to unravel completely. As the ambulance raced toward the hospital, Emily's heart gave out. The monitor flatlined, a single piercing tone cutting through the chaotic hum of the emergency vehicle. "We've lost her," one medic said, his voice heavy with the weight of those words. For over 10 minutes, there was no heartbeat, no breath, no sign of life. Yet even as the medical team worked tirelessly to revive her, something extraordinary was unfolding, a journey far beyond the physical confines of the ambulance or the hospital that awaited her. If this story has touched your heart, please like this video and leave a comment saying Amen to receive a blessing today. Let us know which city you're from so we can include your community in our prayers. Together we can spread faith, hope, and love to every corner of the world. Thank you for being here with us. Emily felt herself drifting, weightless and untethered, as if the threads binding her to the world had been gently released. At first, everything was a blur. She could hear faint echoes, voices calling her name, the steady hum of machines, and the frantic rhythm of footsteps rushing around her. But these sounds began to fade, like whispers carried off by the wind, replaced by an all-encompassing stillness. Then came the light. It wasn't harsh or blinding, but soft and warm, wrapping around her like a familiar embrace. Emily's awareness sharpened, and she realized she was no longer lying on the cold, sterile floor of the ambulance. She was floating, suspended in a place that defied description. Below her, she could see her body, small and fragile, as paramedics worked desperately to bring her back. She could feel their determination and even hear their thoughts, their silent prayers to save her. But the urgency of their actions no longer held her. As she looked around, the world she had known dissolved, replaced by a realm of pure radiance. Colors she had no words for swirled in the air, hues that seemed to sing in harmony, each one vibrating with a life of its own. A sense of peace she had never experienced before filled her completely, as if every burden she had ever carried had been lifted. The warmth of the light wasn't just physical. It reached into the deepest parts of her soul, filling her with love so pure it brought tears to her eyes. Her surroundings were unlike anything she had imagined heaven to be. There were no golden gates or clouds, but a vast expanse that seemed to stretch infinitely in every direction. The air shimmered as if alive, and a melody, faint and otherworldly, resonated through the space. It wasn't a sound she heard with her ears, but something she felt within her, a vibration that spoke of joy, love, and something more profound, eternity. As she floated in this ethereal space, a figure emerged from the light. His presence was unmistakable, and the moment her eyes met his, she felt a wave of recognition. It was as if she had known him forever. Jesus stood before her, radiant and serene, his expression filled with a love so deep it transcended words. His eyes, kind and piercing, seemed to see every part of her fears, her joys, her questions, and yet she felt no judgment, only understanding. Emily's breath caught. Though she wasn't breathing in the physical sense anymore, she wanted to speak, to ask him 1,000 questions, but she found she didn't need to. Every thought, every feeling was met with an unspoken answer, conveyed in a way that felt like truth itself being poured into her. "You are not here by accident," he said, his voice gentle yet resonant, echoing through her very being. The words carried a weight she couldn't fully grasp, but knew she was meant to understand. Before she could ask what he meant, the light around them began to shift. Images started to form, visions of a world that looked like Earth, but wasn't quite as she had left it. The peace she had felt moments ago was tinged with something else now, something heavier. She turned to Jesus, her heart filled with questions she wasn't ready to ask, as the images unfolded before her. If this story has resonated with you, we invite you to join our community by subscribing to the channel and liking this video. Together, we can explore stories of faith, love, and inspiration that connect us all. Your presence here is a blessing, and we're grateful to share this journey with you. As the radiance of the light shifted, Emily found herself suspended above the earth, gazing down at the planet she had called home. It looked breathtakingly beautiful from this perspective, the oceans gleaming like molten sapphire, and the continents stretching out in vibrant hues of green and gold. The atmosphere shimmered with a soft glow, as if the earth itself was alive, pulsing with energy. Emily's heart swelled with awe at the sight, a profound love for her home flooding her soul. But the serene beauty didn't last. The image of Earth began to change, its brightness dimming as flashes of chaos emerged across its surface. Wildfires raged uncontrollably through vast forests, their orange flames devouring everything in their path. Cities were swallowed by floodwaters, the streets turning into rivers as people clung to rooftops in desperation. Tornadoes tore through towns, their ferocity leaving nothing but rubble in their wake. Emily could hear the cries of those caught in the devastation, their voices a haunting chorus of fear and pain. She turned to Jesus, her heart aching with the weight of what she was seeing. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked, her voice trembling with both fear and sorrow. "This is the path humanity has chosen," Jesus said, his tone steady yet filled with sadness. "But it is not the only path." As he spoke, the images shifted once again. Amid the destruction, Emily began to see moments of light and hope. She saw people coming together, their hands reaching out to help those in need. Communities rebuilt what had been destroyed, their collective spirit stronger than the disasters they faced. Strangers became family as they worked side by side, driven by compassion and a shared sense of purpose. These glimpses of unity shone like beacons in the darkness, a reminder that even in the midst of chaos, there was still good. Emily's eyes filled with tears as she watched these scenes of hope. The contrast between the devastation and the moments of love and resilience was almost too much to bear. She turned to Jesus again, her voice breaking. "What can I do? How can I help?" "You have been chosen to see these things," he replied, his gaze meeting hers with a depth of understanding that seemed infinite. You must share this vision with the world. Help them understand the power of their choices, the importance of love and unity. The vision before her began to grow more vivid, each scene etched into her memory with startling clarity. She saw leaders making decisions that would shape the fate of nations. She saw individuals standing up for what was right, even when it was difficult, and she saw the shadow of darkness, a force working tirelessly to sow division, fear, and despair. As these images continued to unfold, Emily felt a sense of urgency building within her. The stakes were higher than she had ever imagined, and the future of humanity seemed to hang in the balance. She didn't know how she would share what she had seen, but she knew that she must. If this chapter has touched your heart, please like this video and comment "Amen" to receive a blessing today. Let us know the name of your city in the comments so we can include it in our prayers and send blessings your way. Together, we can spread love, hope, and light to every corner of the world. The visions before Emily grew sharper, each scene etched into her mind with an intensity that made her heart ache. She floated, still suspended in the celestial light, as the earth continued to spin below her. The beauty of the planet was undeniable, but so too was the darkness that crept across its surface, a darkness born not of nature, but of humanity's own hand. Emily watched as greed and selfishness played out on a global scale. She saw leaders neglect their people, prioritizing power and wealth over the well-being of their nations. Forests were razed to make way for industry, rivers polluted until they ran black, and communities abandoned in the wake of progress that served only a few. The earth itself seemed to groan under the weight of these choices, its vibrant colors fading as destruction spread. The vision shifted, focusing on people. Arguments turned into riots, their anger spilling into the streets. Families were torn apart by division, their hearts hardened by fear and mistrust. Emily could feel their pain as if it were her own, each act of cruelty and indifference cutting deeply into her soul. But even in the midst of this despair, flickers of light appeared. She saw small acts of kindness, a man sharing his last meal with a stranger, a woman kneeling to comfort a child who had lost everything, neighbors banding together to rebuild homes destroyed by disaster. These moments, though fleeting, shone brightly against the backdrop of chaos. They were reminders that hope still existed, that love could still triumph even in the darkest times. Jesus stood silently beside her, his presence a steady source of comfort. Emily turned to him, her voice trembling with emotion. Why do people choose this path? Why do they hurt each other and the world they live in? It is not because they are beyond redemption, Jesus replied, his tone filled with an unshakable love for humanity. It is because they have forgotten. They have forgotten their connection to one another, to the earth, and to me. Fear, pride, and ignorance blind them to the truth. The vision grew more intense, revealing leaders trying to rally their people. Some spoke words of wisdom and unity, calling for change and compassion. Others stoked division, using fear to manipulate and control. Emily saw the impact of their choices ripple outward, shaping the lives of countless others. This is the crossroads, Jesus continued, gesturing toward the earth. The choices made now will determine the path humanity takes. There is still time to turn away from the darkness, but it requires courage and faith. Emily's resolve grew stronger with each word. She didn't fully understand how she could make a difference, but she knew that this vision had been shown to her for a reason. The weight of her mission pressed on her, not as a burden, but as a call to action that she could not ignore. As the visions continued, Emily's focus was drawn to a single figure standing amidst the swirling chaos on Earth. At first, the figure seemed small and insignificant against the backdrop of crumbling cities, burning forests, and turbulent seas. But as she watched, his presence grew clearer, more defined, until there was no mistaking who it was. It was a man she had seen on television countless times, a polarizing figure whose name evoked both admiration and disdain in equal measure. Donald Trump. His expression was solemn, his face lined with the weight of responsibility. He stood before a massive crowd, his voice ringing out over the noise of dissent and applause. The reactions were starkly divided. Some cheered with fervent support, while others jeered with open hostility. Emily turned to Jesus, her heart heavy with questions. "Why him?" she asked, her voice a mix of confusion and disbelief. "Why does he matter in all of this?" Jesus' gaze softened, filled with understanding. "He is not here to save humanity," he said, his tone steady and sure. "But he has been placed in this position for a purpose. His role is to act as a catalyst, to challenge the world, to confront hidden truths, to force people to examine their values, and to bring what lies in darkness into the light." Emily watched as the vision unfolded further. She saw Trump facing relentless opposition. He stood at the center of heated debates, accusations, and public scrutiny. Yet, despite the adversity, he did not waver. She saw him in moments of solitude, the weight of his role etched deeply into his expression. He appeared both vulnerable and unshakable, his resolve growing stronger with each challenge. Jesus continued, "It is through trials that strength is tested, and through conflict that growth can occur. He is flawed, as all are, but his imperfections are part of the greater plan. They force others to confront their own biases, fears, and truths." Emily's heart felt torn. She didn't know how to reconcile the man she saw before her with the man she had heard so much about. The vision shifted again, showing glimpses of his life beyond the public eye. She saw moments of quiet reflection, conversations where he sought wisdom, and private struggles that few ever witnessed. These glimpses painted a more complex picture, one that defied the simplistic narrative she had grown accustomed to. As she watched, Emily began to see the ripple effect of his actions. People were forced to take sides, to speak out, to question what they truly believed. For some, he became a symbol of defiance against corruption and dishonesty. For others, he represented everything they feared. But in both cases, he acted as a mirror, reflecting the divisions and hopes within humanity. Jesus placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch filling her with reassurance. "His role is not without meaning," he said. "It is not about whether people like him or agree with him. It is about the choices they make in response to him. He is a test, a challenge, to see whether humanity will choose fear or faith, division or unity." The vision shifted once more, showing moments of unity sparked by his actions. People who had been divided found common ground as they worked together to address the issues brought to light. Emily began to understand that the true message wasn't about one man. It was about the way he revealed the deeper battle within humanity itself. The vision around Emily darkened, the warmth of the light fading slightly as a chilling presence crept in. She could feel it, a shadowy weight pressing against the purity of the realm she inhabited. The harmony she had witnessed moments before now seemed threatened by an unseen force, one that sought to undo everything good and whole in the world. Emily's gaze returned to earth, but the images had changed. Instead of seeing people rebuilding or standing together, she saw shadowy figures moving in secret. They gathered in hidden rooms, their faces obscured, their intentions dark and calculated. These were not ordinary humans, but something more sinister, beings cloaked in spiritual darkness, their presence radiating malice and deceit. "They work tirelessly to sow division," Jesus said, his voice steady yet heavy with sorrow. "Their goal is not merely to destroy lives, but to fracture humanity's spirit, to turn people away from truth, hope, and love." Emily shivered as she watched these forces at work. She saw them whispering lies into the ears of leaders, manipulating them to act out of greed and fear. She saw them fueling conflicts, stirring up anger and hatred among communities. Every act of destruction and despair she had witnessed in the earlier visions seemed to trace back to these shadows, their influence spreading like a poison through the world. And yet, amid this darkness, there was resistance. Emily's focus shifted to a small, flickering light, a figure standing resolute against the shadows. It was Trump again, surrounded by his supporters but also facing relentless opposition. She saw attempts to silence him, plans hatched in secret to discredit, undermine, and even eliminate him. Assassination plots unfolded before her eyes, sniper rifles aimed at his motorcade, explosives planted near his gatherings, conspiracies woven with chilling precision. Her heart raced as she turned to Jesus, her voice trembling. Why are they targeting him so much? Why does it feel like they're trying to stop him at all costs? Because he represents a disruption, Jesus answered. He is not perfect, nor is he the solution. But his presence forces these shadows into the light, where they can no longer hide. The devil thrives in secrecy and fear, and when these are exposed, his power begins to wane. Emily's mind struggled to comprehend the scale of the battle she was witnessing. This wasn't just about one man or one moment. It was a spiritual war being waged on every front. The stakes were far greater than she had imagined. The devil's forces weren't simply attacking individuals, they were working to dismantle the very fabric of hope, unity, and truth. But the vision didn't end there. Emily saw glimpses of what could happen if humanity chose to resist the darkness. She saw communities standing together, their prayers forming a shield of light that repelled the shadows. She saw people speaking out against lies, their courage inspiring others to do the same. And she saw acts of love, simple, powerful gestures that created ripples of hope across the globe. The battle wasn't over, and the outcome wasn't guaranteed, but Emily could feel it deep within her soul. The darkness wasn't invincible. The light had the power to prevail, but only if people chose to fight for it. The darkness began to lift, and Emily felt the warmth of the light returning. The shadowy figures faded from her vision, replaced by scenes of ordinary people, families sitting together at dinner tables, children playing in fields, workers building homes, and communities gathering in celebration. These images, though simple, filled Emily with a deep sense of hope. The world she saw now was one she recognized, not as perfect, but as one still capable of love, resilience, and redemption. As she turned to Jesus, his expression was filled with both urgency and compassion. She could feel the weight of what he was about to say, the significance of the task he would place upon her. "The world is at a crossroads," he began, his voice steady and resolute. "The choices humanity makes in the coming days will determine its future. You have seen what could be, the devastation, the division, but you have also seen the light that remains. That light must be nurtured and spread." Emily's heart raced. "But what can I do? I'm just one person, and I'm so young. How can I make a difference?" Jesus smiled, his gaze filled with reassurance. "It is not about how old you are or how much you know. It is about your willingness to act, to share what you have seen, and to remind others of the power they hold within themselves. The light is not mine alone to carry. It is within each of them, waiting to be rekindled." The vision shifted again, and Emily saw herself standing before a crowd. Her voice rang out with a strength she didn't know she possessed, her words inspiring those who listened. She spoke of the light she had seen, the warnings Jesus had given her, and the hope that still existed if humanity chose to embrace it. As she spoke, the crowd's faces transformed. Fear gave way to determination, and despair was replaced by faith. Jesus continued, "Your mission is to tell them the truth, to remind them that they are not powerless. The shadows thrive on fear and ignorance, but when truth is revealed, they lose their grip. The battle is not fought with weapons, but with love, courage, and faith. Emily nodded, her resolve growing. The visions she had seen were overwhelming, but now they felt like a call to action. She understood that her role wasn't to solve everything on her own, but to be a spark that could ignite change in the hearts of others. "You will face challenges," Jesus warned gently. "Not everyone will believe you, and some will resist the message you bring, but do not let fear silence you. Remember, even the smallest light can drive out the darkest shadows." As he spoke, Emily felt a warmth spread through her chest, a steady flame of determination that seemed to anchor her. She didn't know exactly how she would fulfill this mission, but she knew she couldn't turn away from it. The stakes were too high, and the message too important to keep to herself. The light around her began to grow brighter, and she felt herself being pulled back toward the world she had left behind. Her time in this heavenly realm was coming to an end, but her journey was only beginning. The light around Emily grew blinding, its brilliance enveloping her in a final embrace. She felt herself being gently drawn back, as if an unseen force were guiding her home. The celestial warmth she had come to know began to fade, replaced by the cold sterility of the world she had left behind. The vibrant melodies of the heavenly realm softened, replaced by the steady beeping of machines and the muffled sound of voices. Her chest tightened as a sharp gasp tore through her lungs. Emily's body jolted on the hospital bed, her heart beating once more. The light above her dimmed as the reality of the hospital room came into focus. Blinking against the harsh fluorescent glow, she felt the sting of air rushing into her lungs, a painful reminder of her return. The voices grew louder, urgent, disbelieving. Her parents' tear-streaked faces appeared above her, their hands trembling as they reached for her. "Emily!" her mother cried, her voice breaking with a mixture of relief and disbelief. Her father clasped her hand tightly, his grip trembling as he murmured prayers of gratitude. The doctors stood frozen for a moment, their expressions a mix of shock and awe. Emily had been clinically dead for over 10 minutes, her heart silent, her body still. Yet here she was, alive, breathing, her eyes searching their faces with a newfound clarity. It was a miracle, one that no medical explanation could suffice to describe. Emily tried to speak, but her voice was hoarse, her throat raw from the breathing tube. She didn't need words to convey what she felt. Her eyes, wide with wonder and purpose, told her story. She had returned, not just to life, but with a mission that burned brightly within her. The days that followed were a blur of recovery. As her body healed, her mind remained consumed by the visions she had seen. Every image, every word from Jesus was seared into her memory. She replayed them over and over, each detail clear as day. The chaos, the hope, the warnings, they were no longer just scenes from another realm. They were a responsibility, a truth she had been chosen to carry. Her parents noticed the change in her. Emily, always vibrant and full of life, now carried a quiet intensity. There was a depth in her gaze, a weight in her words that hadn't been there before. One evening, as they sat beside her hospital bed, she found the courage to share what had happened. She described the light, the peace, and her encounter with Jesus. Her voice trembled as she recounted the visions of Earth's future, the spiritual battle unfolding, and the choice humanity faced. Her parents listened in stunned silence, their faces shifting between awe and concern. "Emily," her mother said softly, her voice tinged with worry. "That's extraordinary. But are you sure it wasn't just a dream? Maybe something your mind created while you were unconscious?" Emily shook her head firmly, her conviction unshakable. "It wasn't a dream, Mom. It was more real than anything I've ever experienced. I was there. Jesus spoke to me, and he told me I had to share this with the world." Her father leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "If what you're saying is true," he said cautiously, "then it's a lot for you to carry, especially at your age. Are you ready for this?" Emily hesitated, the weight of his words settling on her. She was just a girl after all, but then she remembered the strength she had felt in Jesus' presence, the assurance that she wasn't alone in this mission. She met her father's gaze and replied, "I don't think I have a choice. People need to know." Her parents exchanged a look but didn't argue. They didn't fully understand what Emily had been through, but they could see the sincerity in her eyes and hear the conviction in her voice. Whatever had happened, it had changed her, and they would support her, no matter how uncertain the road ahead seemed. If this story has touched your heart, we'd love to have you join our community by subscribing to our channel and liking this video. Together, we can share stories of faith, hope, and inspiration, building a space where love and light shine bright. Your presence here means so much to us. Emily's recovery was swift, but her transformation was even more profound. She left the hospital with a renewed sense of purpose, carrying within her the weight of the visions and the words Jesus had entrusted to her. Though she was just a young girl, she knew her mission transcended age or experience. It was a calling she couldn't ignore. As the days turned into weeks, Emily began sharing her story with those around her. At first, it was just her close friends and family. She described the light, the peace, and the overwhelming love she had felt in Jesus' presence. She spoke of the visions of Earth's potential futures, one filled with chaos and division, and another brimming with hope and unity. And she spoke of the choices humanity faced, the spiritual battle waging not just around them, but within their own hearts. The reactions were varied. Some listened with awe and gratitude, moved by the depth of her experience and the clarity of her message. Others were skeptical, dismissing her words as the imaginings of a young girl who had been through a traumatic event. But Emily didn't let doubt deter her. She had seen too much, felt too much to be silenced by disbelief. As her story spread, it began to resonate with more people. Communities came together to discuss her message, exploring ways to bridge divides and rebuild with love and compassion. Churches invited her to speak, her words inspiring congregations to reflect on their own choices and the role they could play in shaping a better future. Online, her story reached even further, sparking conversations and movements dedicated to faith, hope, and action. Emily herself remained humble through it all. She didn't see herself as a prophet or savior, but as a vessel for a message greater than herself. She often reminded those who listened to her that the power to change the world didn't lie in grand gestures or extraordinary people. It lay in everyday choices, in acts of kindness, in standing up for truth and unity even when it was difficult. As she reflected on her journey, Emily felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had been given a second chance, not just to live, but to make a difference. The visions she had seen, though at times terrifying, had also been filled with hope. They had shown her that even in the darkest times, light could prevail if humanity chose to let it shine. Her message was simple but powerful. Love overcomes fear, unity triumphs over division, and faith can illuminate even the darkest paths. She knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she also knew that it was worth traveling. As she stood before another gathering, sharing her story once more, Emily looked out at the faces before her. She could see the light beginning to flicker in their eyes, the hope taking root. It was a reminder that the mission she carried wasn't hers alone. It was one that belonged to all of them. Thank you for being part of this journey and for letting Emily's story touch your heart. If this message inspired you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. We're building a community where faith, hope, and love are at the center, and we'd love for you to join us. And before you go, we have something truly special waiting for you. Just click on the video appearing on your screen now. It's a revelatory and glorious message that could transform your life. Thank you for being here. Amen.